how to set up a community interest company, CIC, practical elements, and good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining live. Those of you who've made some time, thank you very much, greatly appreciated. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, if you are watching the recording, wherever you may be. And my name is Michael. I'm Michael Martin. I am head of Net Zero and advisor team manager at Wenta. And I'd like to thank you for your interest in all things social enterprise. I will be taking you through very shortly the practical considerations of CIC versus other options, and the step-by-step of how to register, and various other support sources and resources that you will be able to access. What will make this as interactive as possible is if, those of you live anyway, if you'd like to share a little bit about your particular cause, and that's giving you a view to why a CIC is in your thinking, that would be great if you could share that with me so that I can hopefully provide an engaging next 58 minutes or so. So we're going to be running through, we're just starting after 2 p.m. on Thursday, the 6th of April, 2023. It's new financial year, isn't it? The government's financial year. Good timing. And I'd like to give those who are unfamiliar with the service, though, just a little bit of an overview about how all of this works. And what we have to offer at Wenta for you. And so I'll be doing just a brief overview for a few moments, and then we'll crack on with the specifics for CIC. So if you want to take a moment to just put in the chat box in Zoom, those of you who are live, if you hover your mouse at the top of the screen or the bottom of the screen, you should see a taskbar with the chat box, have a little speech icon. If you mark it for hosts and panelists, only I will see it. Okay, so I'm Michael, hi. And I won't be sharing that with anybody else unless you're happy for me to do so. I might ask you for your consent if you've made a particularly interesting and valuable observation, and I'm sure you will. But I'll ask you consent first, just to say if you're happy for me to share that with everyone. But I'll respect, your confidentiality if you prefer. If you're happy to share with everyone, you want to do a little bit of networking, please do so. Select everyone instead of hosts and panelists, everyone will see it. So to provide a little bit of background, Wenta is a social enterprise, referred to as a not-for-profit, although the idea for any not-for-profit is to make one. It's what we do with it that matters, and reinvesting it is the point. And so Wenta has been doing that for almost 40 years to the day. This year is celebrating its 40th anniversary, well, later on this year in 2023. And Wenta's core business actually is property. And we have 4 business centres with commercial, as we might refer to them, tenants. So people who are hot desking, have office space, managed workspace under licensed monthly terms, and workshops for manual trade. So we do that from 3 centres that Wenta owns. The original, and still there, is Watford. In fact, that's where the name comes from. Watford Enterprise Agency is what Wenta stood for originally. Potters Bar and Enfield. So those are the 3 centres that Wenta owns. And we manage Stevenage Business and Technology Centre in Stevenage on behalf of Stevenage Borough Council. And so the surplus from that is ploughed back into providing a range of support services for our tenants in each of the centres, as well as the wider business community, and not just in the UK, indeed overseas. That's in the form of what you're watching right now, which is a webinar. And so this is a great way to be getting across a lot of useful information about particular topics. And we have, when you registered for this one, my hope is that what you saw was a lot of others, and everything from business planning to finance and bookkeeping, marketing, some that we host as a team at Wenta, some facilitated by independent specialists, some by major brands, Google among them, high street banks. And so do please make use of those because they're free and they're helpful. 40 years worth of support says that people like what we're doing. So that's great. What you also have free is the opportunity to book in on a one-to-one basis and with the advisory team to then pick up on the specifics that apply in your particular case with your particular venture, in your particular circumstances. And you might have a notepad with bullet points. What do I do about this? How do I go about that? That's what we're here for. And so as a team, you could be talking to any of us. We've all got what I call eclectic backgrounds because we are generalists. We're meeting people from all walks of life with ventures at different stages. And some are charities, some are social enterprises, some are commercial, some are voluntary. And we can then work with you to help progress from where you are to where you would like to be. And some people are thinking about starting up. Some people have already started up and they may be sole traders, partnerships, possibly incorporated limited company, perhaps owner managers, perhaps already with the team, perhaps in business premises of one form or another. So this is a great free resource for you all. Now, in addition to that, on the Wenta website, you'll see various tabs that showcase a range of wider support resources. One of them being a savings tab. If you look at the Wenta website, wenta.co.uk/savings, what you'll see there is a list of providers, again, independents and specialists and major brands, offering deals for you. Some of those deals are freebies, some are concessionary pricing in the form of money off or discount codes or vouchers, whatever it may be. So if you're looking for, let's say, a graphic designer, somebody to help with your search engine marketing, if you're looking for a bank account, if you're looking for an accounts package, and lots of other things, please have a look because you might get a deal. If you claim an offer just by clicking claim offer, then it's not committing you to anything. It's just a conversation that you'll have. They'll get in touch with you, let you know about what's involved, how they can help. And if you decide to go ahead, fantastic, you've got yourself a deal. If you don't, no harm, no foul, no problem. Go check elsewhere. We are also very keen to help people run green and greener ventures. And so Wenta has invested quite heavily in tackling its own rising utilities costs, same as everybody else. Things like waste management. As a property business, we're very mindful of these things. And so Wenta's invested not just in looking as an organization to run a greener venture, but again, for our wider clientele. And so Wenta is now an accrediting body with a team that's fully carbon literacy certified, as it's known. We'd like to be helping you. You'll probably see from the Wenta website homepage, almost 2,500 businesses are supported by Wenta to help reduce their emissions, to run a greener organization, even owner managers from home, how to do their bit, how we can all do our bit. And so that initiative is called Action Zero. If you have a look at the site, it says Net Zero My Business. Please have a look at that. We've got a free level of membership. It's a membership subscription base. Bronze one is free. To find out a bit more. It doesn't cost you anything to find out a bit more. And there's a few resources there. There's some webinars, there's some e-learning modules, there's some grant information. Hopefully we'll be adding to that in due course. There's also a little glossary there, so you can gen up a little bit on all the terminology. We have silver and gold plus membership, literally cup of coffee pricing a week. It's heavily subsidized. And silver is where you can learn a bit more about the science behind all of this, and why it's become an imperative. But more really from the relevance of the standpoint of you setting up and potentially as a CIC, Increasingly, pressures being brought to bear on being held accountable by the general public, from grant makers, from vested interest stakeholders, to ensure that all types of ventures are doing their bit to reduce emissions. And so what that links with, though, is the opportunities in a greener economy, because the ones who take a step forward with this are not going to get left behind. And what you wouldn't want is to find that all the money's going to people who have got ahead of you. It would be really good to be recruiting volunteers who have greener skills, green talents. This isn't going away anytime soon. So the assistance is there for you if you would like to find out with the silver level. Gold is more about the actual journey of reducing emissions, being able to do carbon footprint, being able to set targets, develop an action plan, to do the transparent reporting. It's all there, okay? E-learning modules, webinars, one-to-one support, it's all there for you. Please have a look. If you're setting up a CIC and you're at home at the moment, and you probably don't want your home address being out there in the public domain, then another service Wenta can offer is a virtual office address. If you're local to Hertfordshire, then you've got 4 addresses to choose from, because we've got 4 centres, and you're more than welcome. Please have a look at that on the Wenta website. We appreciate people tuning in from all over the country and all over the world, in which case our encouragement would be to you to check out a virtual office facility so it protects your privacy a little bit more. But that's a service we can offer you as well. All right, so thank you very much for taking time. My presentation style is to give you an opportunity to read what is on the slide as I move them forward without me talking all over it. So when I move the slides forward, I'm going to pause for a moment or two just to let you read what's there. I won't read word for word every single slide. I try to avoid death by PowerPoint, and I'll talk around what's on the slide, but there will be some particular wording I'll explain because there's terminology you might not be familiar with. And but do stop me as I go. If you've got questions, please ask. And in the next, well, till 3 o'clock, British summertime, as we are, this is what we're going to be covering. So CIC, just as a reminder, community interest company. It's not the only option that may be there for you if you are quite passionate about, which I guess you are, the cause, whether that be environmental, whether that be humanitarian. We're going to look at not just the different entities that are available, but also a little bit of psychology in all of this. And also, when we say, is it right for you? I'd like to, enough about me. Let's talk about you. And I haven't actually said much about myself, but I'll be coming to that. I'm often asked a question. Our team for many years has often asked a question. And this is my 28th year in some form of a consulting or advisory role. And I've had 5 ventures, 3 as an employer, 2 sold as going concerns, and I'm the unsalaried founder of a registered charity. And being asked a question, which is, okay, Michael, so is it a good idea? And for nearly 3 decades, my answer has been the same, which is, it might be. Go ask your intended audience, establish demand. Thing is, are you the person to make it happen? Now, very well-meaning individuals who care deeply about something for a variety of reasons is one thing, but it doesn't necessarily follow that they have the skills, the resilience, the fortitude, the self-belief to make it happen, and to know when to get out of their own way and to delegate to other people who might be better placed. And so, as with most endeavors, it's balancing task management with people management. What we're offering is a chance for you to use us as a sounding board, a second pair of eyes on a business plan, cash flow projections, a grant application, to come and cry on our shoulders. If you're looking for a mentor, we can do this. If you're looking for a cheerleading coach, we can do this. If you want just the advice, we can do this. What we're offering is not just knowledge transfer, but perspective. And that's mainly because it ain't our first rodeo. You're not stuck with me. You can talk to the rest of the team. We've all got slightly different backgrounds, which is great because then you've got frame of reference. But the information is going to stay the same. If you want to know what do I do to set up a CIC, you're going to hear the same thing from all of us. But in terms of perspective, well, it's like your own network. There's people that will give you a particular view, and it's important to be surrounded by people who are supportive. You don't really want to be sharing, all that's going on with people who, frankly, couldn't care less or just aren't, a bit ambivalent. You don't need that. It's hard enough as it is. But you've got with us, okay, professionals, and you've got people with the perspective and the experience, in some instances, lived experience or familiar lived experience. And we do understand that there's some of you may be working with vulnerable people, vulnerable children, vulnerable adults, you can come and talk to us. And what we're going to be doing is helping you look at these skills and qualities, probing a little bit, playing advocate a little bit. Okay, if you need some help with this, we'll be signposting where it's appropriate in your sector, if that's relevant. Other things you can, work with us on. For example, on the marketing side, we've got more than a dozen webinars there that are equally as applicable to a social enterprise as they are a commercial venture. Fundraising, yes, a lot of us have got experience in that, happy to help. Now, the options for a social enterprise, now's where we're getting to some of the technicalities and the particular structures, the legal entities. So I'm going to move on with that in a second. But if I could just ask those of you who are live, I'm quite happy. I can carry on moving the slides forwards and talking. I'm giving you an opportunity. If you want to share, okay, use the chat box. Let me know a bit about what you're looking to set up or have already set up. I'd be glad to tailor what I'm saying to you. Okay, so not just talking in generalities, but if I don't hear from you, that's fine. I'll try and use examples as we go, so that in the hope that there's something there that you can think, that's great, that's really useful. That's exactly the field we're in. Okay, so standing offer. If you want to share, please do. Now, 5 types of structure. And the first one may be where you're already coming from. Perhaps you've got together with some people locally in your community who feel quite strongly about what you feel strongly about. It could be helping people with their well-being. It might be food supply, helping people who maybe have financial hardship. Might be an environmental cause. People come together for lots of different reasons. It doesn't actually cost anything to set up in an unincorporated sense. It's merely a group of people who would like to fundraise, to use that money through donations, possibly even grants, maybe sponsorship, to make a difference in some way, provide a service or provide goods where all of the profit from it is reinvested. In other words, they're not being taken for private personal gain. Now, that's fine, you can do that. However, even though it's set up for what we would call social good, there could be a liability for taxation. So it needs to keep records, and it would need to disclose records potentially to HMRC, what is now His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, possibly it could even be a limited company as a status, where it would be reporting to Companies House as well as HMRC for corporation tax purposes. If it doesn't make a profit, then there's zero tax liability. If it makes a profit, but all profits reinvested before the end of the trading year, there's no tax liability. And it could be a way forward. However, one of the greater concerns of people with an unincorporated association is that there's unlimited liability, unless it's a limited company, and even then that's not guaranteed. And not many people are comfortable with the idea that, hang on, if something goes wrong here, I'm personally liable. So there's pros and cons. Yes, it's the simplest. Yes, it's free, apart from your time, and in costs you're going to incur. The risks are greater, and actually unincorporated associations generally won't be able to tap into the sort of grant funding that other types of entities could do. Now, another option is what's referred to as a cooperative, and these are nothing new. You probably heard of what we call the co-op. Okay, well, they're not alone. And in fact, when you go to the UK main source of information about co-ops and setting one up, which is called Co-op UK, I know the web address is the other way around. It says uk.coop, but it's called Co-op UK. I love their strapline, and it says, "We're not just a shop." Point being, there's literally thousands of co-ops in the UK and indeed overseas, and they've been around for more than 100 years in some instances, there's something of a resurgence, I'd have to say, in terms of interest in people setting them up, and their track record is pretty good. In fact, their trading longevity, how long they stay in business, so to speak, is actually on average longer than a commercial entity. I think it's something like 7 years, whereas a commercial entity, it's not as long as that. So a cooperative is, again, a group of people, but the model for that is it could be a legal entity that's limited, probably limited by guarantee, and it could even be, actually, believe it or not, a CIC that adopts cooperative articles of association. Now, there's a little bit more complexity to that, and that's for a separate conversation. We're not going to get into that in this webinar. There is a webinar coming, hasn't been launched yet, but Wenta will be rolling it out quite soon, on cooperatives, if that's of interest to you. Register for it when you see it on the Wenta website. We'll be going into that in more detail, but have a look at UK Co-op UK site. You've got the link there, and you'll see some bits. And book in on a one-to-one. Come and have a chat with us on a one-to-one, and we'll go through it with you. I'll skip the next one because we're going to do that. Registered charity. So that is known as a charitable incorporated organisation, CIO. That's registered with the Charities Commission. I must emphasise this. A CIC is not a charity. Okay, it's a social enterprise, not for profit. There are charities that are not registered, but a CIO is the official designation nowadays of a registered charity. There are legacy registered charities whose model is limited by guarantee, which is also the same entity for a CIC, but there is a distinction in that the charity would be registered with the Charity Commission, whereas a community interest company would be registered with the CIC Regulator, and we're going to get into the detail of that just shortly. Again, something for another day. I would like to just make sure you're very clear about this. I introduced myself as the unsalaried founder of a registered charity, and the founder of a charity cannot be paid by it. If you are thinking that on balance charity might be the way forward, good for you. However, you would not be able to be paid by it. Trustees, as a result of the Charities Act 2022, are now entitled to some limited remuneration, but not the founder. And therefore, if you see that you are dependent on this for income, it's not going to happen. So an alternative, a very credible, feasible, and viable alternative is CIC, because as founder of the CIC, you can be paid by it. Where the money comes from to pay you is another conversation. We'll be coming back to that later in the webinar. A B Corp, Corp stands short for corporation, is something that originated in the United States of America, North America, and has now been adopted as a trading style in the UK, but it's not an entity in and of itself. And it's for commercial organizations, which mostly are limited companies. Not necessarily, it could be a partnership, could even be a sole trader, but it's usually limited. And it would be a registration. Now, it's not an entity, it's a trading style, but it would be registered with an organization called B-Lab UK, B-Lab UK, and it's a points-based scoring system to determine social value. In that it makes a profit, but there's a commitment in some form or another to business for social good. And it does appeal to a lot of people who don't necessarily want all that goes with setting up a registered charity or even necessarily a CIC, although CIC is a lot simpler than charity. But it would need to have adapted articles of association with a limited company to meet the UK legal requirement. That is a thing. And it will need a mission locked statement. While we're on the topic of locked, I'm gonna, there's a nice segue into the next topic, which is asset lock for CICs. Okay, so they're your options. Now, thoughts, questions? Are we okay so far? Can I have an indication, please? I'm going to move on. The next slide is a bit wordy. Cool. I think there was a hand raised there. Thank you very much. I'm taking it, all's cool. You can type in chat or the Q&A box, either or, I don't mind, just to let me know. If you're all okay, that's great. Right, I'll let you read that first. So, to clarify, technically there's 3 options. We're only focusing on 2 options. The third one being public limited. And the CIC Regulator, which is an executive branch of Companies House, has not made much of that. And its relevance is questionable, really, for the vast majority of people who access Wenta services. So we're focused on 2. And the guarantee, limited by guarantee version is the most common by far, but that's mainly because the majority of people interested in setting up a social enterprise are of a view that the way forward is to access grants, basically free money, free funded money to make things happen. However, there is another option which is closer to the conventional shareholding version of a limited company, but where there's a difference is that the profit extraction by shareholders is limited to a maximum of 35%, so it's called a profit cap, of profits in any one year, usually issued, same as it is in an ordinary limited company, in the form of what's called dividends, just the name given to the money taken as profit. So you can, if you wanted to, set up that version. It's more suited to those who would envisage investment from the commercial sector, possibly high net worth individuals. And there are certainly CICs limited by shareholding in that way, no question. And if you'd like to explore that further, please book in and we'll discuss it. There's pros and cons to each. If, though, your focus is more on grant funding, it's not that the regulator is stipulating this, it's grant makers who stipulate this, that they would prefer, in the main, limited by guarantee. It means you can still be paid by it as founder, and your team could be, under PAYE. So you would have to register with HMRC for PAYE, and you're registering with MHRC for corporation tax purposes. But on the assumption that all profits are reinvested, there's a nil return. There's no tax to pay. You still have to do the return every year, but no tax to pay if you've reinvested it. Where your salary is classed as, and anybody else's salary is classed as, a legitimate business expense, although it is subject to PAYE, which is monthly filing. Now, I did allude earlier to limited liability, and I said, thinking about it in an unincorporated association, that there's personal liability and therefore limited does offer, something of a solution, but it's not guaranteed. Okay, that's for any limited company, not just one as a CIC. There are exceptions, and the reason for that is because there's more than 4. The 4 main acts of Parliament that govern the running of a company, which is Companies Act, Company Directors Disqualifications Act, Enterprise Act, Finance Act, and there are others, such as trade descriptions, sale of goods, so on and so forth. If there is a breach of those acts in the event of some sort of claim, dispute, whatever it might be, then limited liability could conceivably be stripped. It depends why a venture has an issue. Now, my view of this has long been a very simple one, which is, I think the only person who's ever read the Companies Act is the person who wrote it. So if you don't know what's in it, how do you know if you've breached? So as an example, directors, so I'm quoting now from the Companies Act, directors and shareholders must act in good faith with due diligence, with skill, and if there was a problem, they should have known and done something about it. So they've got to discharge their responsibilities with reasonable skill and due diligence. Now, the operative word in all of that is reasonable. What happens is, in a court of law, it's a matter of interpretation. No law is written in black and white. This is why we pay the judiciary to interpret it for us. And it's not actually a solicitor that represents you in court, it's a barrister. So, point being, where's the guarantee? How good's your lawyer? Now, I'm not intending to be the merchant of doom here. What I'm intending is that you have a better understanding of compliances, the importance of doing things properly in best practice. And so long as you're doing that, then you shouldn't have a problem. And what's there more, I would say, to protect you is having the right types of insurances and having good, solid, robust terms and conditions of trading. And at the end of the day, it's a solicitor who's going to tell you how robust they are. Okay, that I presume you would like to sleep at night. It's a simple thing. It's a simple principle. Doing it day in, day out is hard work, but as a simple principle is best practice. Do the right thing. You should be able to sleep at night. Okay. The good thing about having a limited company then is, even though that's not guaranteed, it does create a perception of credibility. People's perception of things does matter because we're all quite subjective creatures. We're not, very few of us are really truly objective. In law, the name of the CIC that you would like to use as a limited company means nobody else can use it. But it wouldn't be referred to as limited in either spelling, the long form or the short form, limited, the word, or LTD. But it would include CIC or community interest company. You've got a choice of long form or short form. And the whole point of why did they even come into being, and they first were launched in 2005, although the talk about them had been going on long before that, is precisely to make it simpler for local communities and people in the local community to make a difference in the local community without all of what goes with setting up a registered charity. There's a lot more to charity. As I said, we won't get into that in this session, but it's a simpler structure. And one of the things that was always said about charities is, well, it's all well and good, but people can't actually get a return on the investment if they want to do social good. Isn't there another way? Well, now there is, and there has been for quite some time. A CIC is the answer. Otherwise, it's philanthropy. People just donating, they're not going to get a return. So that's why the shareholding one exists. Now, the whole point about holding assets for public purposes leads into this lock business, which is asset lock. So now there's quite a wordy slide coming. I'm going to give you a heads up on it before you read it. All it really means is whatever is owned by the CIC cannot be sold for personal gain. If you're going to sell it, you can sell it. You've got to sell it at market value, but who you'd be selling it to and by that I mean equipment, maybe even a building, if the CIC owns it, would have to be sold to another, inverted commas, asset locked venture. In other words, another CIC or a charity. Okay. So what you're about to read, that's what it means. Just to say, and I'll be happy to clarify this with you, my colleagues will be happy to clarify this with you if you'd like to book a session. And I'm going to put this in the chat box, but I'll be giving you the contact details at the end of the session anyway. It's actually the phone number to give us a call, or an email address if you prefer to do it that way. It's easier by phone because that way we can avoid email volleyball. Are you available? No. Are you available later? No. Just give us a call. We can sort it out. If you get in touch with us, 01438 310020 in the UK, info@wenta.co.uk. This is a UK entity, by the way. I appreciate you may be watching from overseas. Thank you very much. You may have your equivalent in your country of choice. In America, North America, you might be equating this with a 501c3. It's not. That would be registered charity is the UK equivalent to a 501c3 non-profit. Not quite the same thing. But there may be some other types of entities that correlate with CIC in your respective federal or other national authorities. In the UK, you do not need to nominate an asset lock body on startup. I'm going to show you some of the forms in a moment. And I'm mindful of time, and actually the next bits are quite quick because most of the explanation is around what is a CIC. But the CIC asset lock element, you don't have to nominate another asset lock when you business or venture when you first start up. You may not know any, so you can leave it blank in the application form. Later, when you've maybe done some partnership work in the community with other ventures, you might think, oh, we work with those guys, they're fantastic. And if we ever shut down for whatever reason, we'd like it to go to them. You can tell the CIC regulator, they'll update your articles of association, the document that's about your internal governance, and it will go to them. If you leave it blank and never fill it out, the CIC regulator will decide who the assets go to, if there are assets. Now you might decide, well, look, hang on, look, it's just me, I've got a laptop and that's it at the moment. Fine, that's yours. It's not, it doesn't belong to the CIC, it's yours. But if you are claiming allowances for equipment of some kind, well, then you've just put it into the venture, haven't you? So that's a slightly different story, but we'll clarify that with you on a one-to-one. There's a web link here. You're going to get a copy of the slides, but if you just want to find it on gov.uk, go to www.gov.uk online, and in the search bar, type CIC. You'll get to these pages. We've even got a video on it as well. You can see the screenshot here. All there. All right, you learn all about it. But I'm going to cover off the key points in the next few slides. Now, technically, there's a third document to create as part of registration. It's called the Memorandum of Association. You will complete that when you apply. It's a very simple document, takes 2 minutes. And all it's really saying is it's the public-facing document that says, what's it called, who's in it, when's its registration date, when's its filing date. And the only other information would be if it was the shareholding version. It was limited by guarantee, done, dusted, 2 minutes while you apply. Okay. What you're uploading is 2 forms for which you will have templates. You can download them. Can you see on the screenshot at the bottom? It says these include the CIC 36 form and articles of association. They're underlined. They're in purple. That means when you click them, you can download them. You've got the templates. If you need them from us, we can email them to you, no problem. You're going to see what the CIC 36 form looks like in a moment. It's simple. They've tried to make it as straightforward as possible. And the good news is all of this usually will take under a week. I'm heartened, encouraged to be able to say that many of my clients at Wenta, never mind those my colleagues of Zine, have set up CICs in the last 12 months. And consistently through the last 12 months, it's taken no longer than a week. So it is quite quick. You know, if you were setting up a charity, it could take months, many months. You will need some ID. If you haven't yet got a government gateway ID, okay, proof of address, proof of identity. All right, so you may need your passport or driving license. You may need, if you haven't already got a government gateway ID account, utilities bill or a bank statement or something that you can upload to evidence your home address in the last 3 months. It won't be on the public record unless that's your registered office address, which is why I was talking about virtual address earlier, which may be a preference. Okay, now the Articles of Association, as I mentioned, are about internal governance. The template document's about 20 pages. There's only 3 or 4 things that need to be changed on that from the template. And if I may suggest, book in with us and we'll go through it with you in more detail. But essentially, you're just adding the name of it, your CIC to it, and you have to set out what are called the CIC objects. So objectives. Pay attention to what I'm about to say. I want to try and minimize the chances of confusion. The Charity Commission for charities have a page on the gov.uk site where they make available what they call model objects for a charity to adapt its constitution. The good news is when you're setting up a CIC, you can borrow from them. On that page, so when you get to gov.uk, just type charitable objects and you will get to the page for model objects for a charity. There's about 12 of them. Things like, for the benefit of relief of financial hardship, social inclusion, vulnerable people, educating, etc., etc., etc. My guess is, for the vast majority of you, your cause will tick a minimum of 1 and could be up to 4 or 5 of them. Please read them, adapt them for the CIC, but do not use the words charity or charitable, because it's not. But my point is, it's a really good way of using the wording that I know the CIC regulator will accept. And then you're just inserting them into the Articles of Association for your CIC. I can help you with that. Okay, one of my colleagues can help you with that. You can send it to us as a draft. We'll give you some feedback on it to help you knock it into shape. What you're looking at is blue font wording that are answers, responses to the questions. There's 3 sections in the application form. You're looking at the middle one. This is section B. Section A is just say what section of the community is benefiting. Now you'll have already decided that, I guess. Okay, it could be young, could be old, could be the vulnerable, could be whomever. And in what sense? Section B is the key one, because this is what's called the community test statement. How does what you're doing differ from what a commercial company set up to do? And the answers you're looking at right here do show how it would differ from a commercial venture. But I'll give you a couple of other examples. A CIC is more likely to be able to attract volunteers than a commercial company. That's one way it differs. A CIC could also tap into potential grant funding, but it's unlikely that a commercial company could. So there's 2 things you can put on this form over and above what's said here. Okay. It's that simple. It's those sections there. The rest of it, sign it. The reason that they've put the lettering in red font bold with underlines and green with underlines is because people tend to ignore what's written there. And you know what? If it's going to get rejected, it's probably going to get rejected for this rather than what your cause is. So that's why they, please follow the instructions. The good news is, if there's just one of you, you can be a sole director of a CIC. You can have a family member as second or more. However, you just need to be mindful that some grant sources will stipulate a minimum of 2. That's not a CIC regulator thing, it's a grant maker thing. Grants I'm going to be coming on to. I'm going to skip the next slide, just mindful of time, but you will see a copy of it in the deck when we send it to you. There are other factors, for want of a phrase, leg bone connected to the ankle bone. There are things like data protection, GDPR. Okay, that's ICO. It's the bottom one you see there, ico.org.uk. Information Commissioner's Office, £35 a year by direct debit gets you registered. You need to follow what the requirements are for GDPR. They'll tell you all about it. We can tell you about it. You want to book in. You may be able to access some free or reduced legal advice. There's some sites there. Health and Safety Executive, have a look at if that's relevant. BBFA, Better Business for All, is a good site that provides background for most sectors, what sort of things they need to be mindful of. You could be joining a professional register, a trade association, an industry body in your sector. If you're in healthcare, for example, there may be a body to join, a professional register. If you're looking to bring on board a roster of practitioners, maybe, and they could be members of an association. BACP as an example, National Counselling Society. I think they've just changed their name, National Counselling Psychotherapy Society, as an example. you're probably going to get better insurance by joining them, through them. Because if you remember, they're referring in bulk, their membership in bulk to a broker, which means the broker can do a better deal. I've known quotes, £5,000 a year become £1,500 a year instead of 5,000 going through an association. £1,000 quotes, 150 quid going through an association. Okay, so see, these are some of the examples. It would be a good idea to have a bookkeeping system, an accounts package of some kind. If it was a full-blown charity, it's a different reporting thing. Liberty Accounts is quite a good one, actually, for charities and social enterprises, and it's quite cost-effective. I mean, last time I checked, I think it was about £12 a month. What's that? Xero, you may have heard of. XERO, it's one of the most popular packages. There's others you can see. On the Wenta website, I mentioned savings earlier. If you have a look at that, you can see that we put the Wenta web address there, because if you go through that, you'll get a deal on it. FreshBooks or Sage, have a look at those. Give them a trial. You can usually have a month's trial with any of these, see which one you like, and then make your choice. Making tax digital is a thing, the third bullet point there, which is from April 2024, you will have to have an accounts package that files your tax returns, whether you do it or whether an accountant does it for you, but it has to be done. If it's a VAT registered venture, they already have to have that since April 2022. Right, we can give you a steer on this. We've got a range of marketing related webinars. Advertising, marketing, promotion, and selling, we see as four distinct disciplines. They're interrelated, but they're distinct. But so when we say marketing, what we're getting at is all of those things. Please check those out. Glad to help if you would like. A review of your social media intentions, raising awareness, search engine optimization, as I said earlier, Google ads, paid ads on platforms. Okay. Just a quick word about, there are different ways you could be fundraising. Crowdfunding can work if you've got a good social following. It's trickier if you haven't. And it's a good idea to have someone in the background who can top it up if you get close to your deadline, because you don't want to miss your deadline when you target and then try and find money from somewhere else, because it's really hard. Then their attitude is, well, if you can't do that, why should we? So there's a knack to it. For some of you, it will be mostly grants, competitions, awards. Friends and family might help out. And high net worth individuals, possibly. It could be a combination of these things, but I would guess for most of you, it's going to be grant funding. The deck we're going to send you, you've got a copy of the recording coming to you. So you've got these web addresses. There are four main grant portals for CICs and charities. Now, to manage, forgive me, to manage expectations, most funding is for charities. They'll get the most. CICs will get way more funding opportunities than a commercial company or sole trade or partnership, but they won't get as many as a charity. Charity Excellence Framework is for CICs as well. It's great, it's free. There's a terrific audit dashboard where they give you a certificate of excellence you can evidence to funders. Really cool site, and it's free, which is even better. It gives a list of grant makers, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. You might think, oh, well, I've checked the council site, I've checked the government site, I've checked Wenta site, there doesn't seem to be a lot of grants. Well, when you're in social enterprise and you're in charities, these sites, you're going to find hundreds of them. So that's a free one. My Funding Central, there is a cost to that if your turnover is above a certain level. Above 30 grand, I think it's 50 quid for the year. Above 50 grand, it goes up a bit more, but below that, it's free. Grants Online, roughly is about 200 quid a year. But you're going to get into some bigger grants that if you're not paying that money, you're just not going to get into. And for me, it's a false economy. If you're thinking, well, why would I pay 200 quid if there's a free one? Well, the answer is because you're going to get to find grants that are not on the free one. And if a grant is 100 grand, 200 grand, what's 200 quid? Same with the Directory of Social Change. Nearly all the major charities, all the major CICs use the Directory of Social Change one, which is about 350 quid, I think, for the year. You might not be able to do it next Tuesday, or next month or 6 months' time, but a route towards it, I strongly recommend give that some thought. So you guys have got some homework. Well done. So here are some things to be putting down on your to-do list. Okay. CRM, donor management. Okay, CRM is customer relations management, but for some of you, it could be a donor management system. There's lots and lots and lots of different ones out there. I recommend you have a look at one of our webinars called Managing Growth, where we go into quite a bit of detail about different types of systems and just a mindset really of scaling in delegating people management rather than tasks, but you try and do it all. That's a useful one. Pricing is a good webinar to be watching if you're selling goods and services through the CIC. Terrific. Thank you very much. Slight overrun. Where are we? 5 past. This is what you've covered. To book in, 01438 310020. Give us a call, info@wenta.co.uk if you'd prefer to email. There's some web links there for the website to download some useful resources, and we look forward to helping you on the next step of the way. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you all the very best with your next steps with the CIC, and all the very best for the future. Have a good Easter, or if you are celebrating Ramadan, if you are celebrating Passover, a good peaceful weekend to one and all. Look forward to speaking with you in due course. Thank you very much.